If Syracuse is going to make a bowl, they're going to have to pull off an upset or two. Here's where they could happen.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in the Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Can Syracuse football go on the road, beat Clemson, beat Notre Dame? Well, never say never. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Plus, where does Syracuse have a puncher's chance at pulling off an upset? We'll discuss that in the middle portion on today's show. But first, the most likely upset opportunities for the Orange for the 2025 college football season. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. Now, before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today, we are ranking the likelihood of Syracuse football and its opponents and the possibility of pulling off an upset. And really, we're only talking about the 6 road games that the Orange have in 2025. I've discussed this before here on Locked On Syracuse, how Syracuse's schedule breakdown is very interesting because the quote-unquote easier games are all at home. The road games have the quote-unquote tougher opponents. So it's an interesting schedule breakdown. So we're going over, of the 6 road games, the likelihood of Syracuse potentially pulling off an upset. The order in which those road games will be played, and I'm going to count Tennessee in here. Tennessee, which is a neutral site in Atlanta, Georgia, that's going to kick off the season for Syracuse in Tennessee, followed by Clemson, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Notre Dame. And remember the goal that I laid out either last week or the week before here on this show about, hey, if Syracuse, if they want to give themselves the best chance at making a bowl, which all you got to do to make a bowl in college football is win half your regular season games. Just win 6 games, you qualify for a bowl, and you're in the ACC, you will be playing in a bowl game. Win 2 road games. You win 2 road games, you give yourself margin for error at home. You're probably going to make a bowl if you're Syracuse if you can manage to win these 2 road games. Now, let's start the show discussing the most likely upset chances for Syracuse football. And I'm going to imagine this right now, that there is going to be disagreement. So feel free to follow along here on this podcast, my order in which there is a possibility for an upset for Syracuse football. Number 1, the most likely upset opportunity for the Orange in 2025 is Georgia Tech. Syracuse goes to Georgia Tech on October 25th. They are coming off a very strong 7-5 season. The reason why I say very strong 7-5 is because on the surface, a 7-5 season, I mean, you're a bowl team. That's pretty nice. You're not terrible, but also not very good, quite frankly. 7-5 is just eh. But if you look at Georgia Tech's schedule from a year ago, 7-5 is actually a very, very strong record for them. So I have a lot of respect for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They are led by third-year head coach Brent Key, and they returned quarterback Haynes King. And for those that are unaware, my comparison for Haynes King is that he is the college football version of Josh Allen. He kind of plays like Josh Allen. He's definitely not as good as Josh Allen. Don't get me wrong on that part, but if you're looking for a similar play style, that's how Haynes King kind of plays. He's a big guy, 6'3", 200 pounds, and he is the type of quarterback that can run through you. He's not someone that's necessarily, I mean, he can go around you, but this is someone who can bulldoze his way through defenders. Very similar to Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills and how he runs the football, right? That's why the comparison is kind of there. They also returned their star running back over the past couple of seasons in Jamal Haynes. A little bit on the smaller end. I believe on College Reference, he's listed at 5'9", 175 pounds, but ultra quick, ultra fast. You do not want to see him with any green grass in front because he can run around you. And hey, once he gets ahead of you, good luck catching Jamal Haynes. Last year, he had about 900 yards on the ground, but nearly 6 yards per carry. That is elite. For reference, I believe LaQuint Allen for Syracuse last year averaged about 4.5 yards per carry, and that's a pretty solid total, 4.5 yards per carry. Jamal Haynes, 6 yards a carry last year for Georgia Tech. There's a reason why I'm talking mostly about their quarterback and their running back and their head coach in Brent Key. Now, Syracuse last season, they beat Georgia Tech, albeit that was a home game. Georgia Tech is not a complicated team. They're not. They're not this sort of team that is going to run anything really that's complex on offense. Sure, they might have a trick play or two, just like any other team in college football, but they're a very simple team. But they're good. They want to run the football down your throat. So the key to beating Georgia Tech, because you know what they want to do, which is run the football, and they're not shy about it, is you want to get ahead of them. If you get ahead of Georgia Tech, which is what Syracuse did last year, going up multiple scores in the second quarter of that game, you all of a sudden force Georgia Tech to do something that they really don't want to do on offense, which is become a pass-first team. It's not that Haynes King can't throw the football. He's got a nice arm. He completed over 70% of his passes last season. That, I believe, led the ACC a year ago. So he can certainly throw the football. But it's almost like, look, you tip your cap if you get ahead of Georgia Tech and they beat you because Haynes King goes off with his arm and he throws for 400 yards, multiple scores. You just tip your cap and you say, you know what? Georgia Tech is just a really good team, and they beat Syracuse on that particular day. What you don't want to have happen is Georgia Tech possibly running for 200-300 yards, because that's what they're capable of doing to almost every team in the country. So overall with Syracuse and Georgia Tech, if you can get ahead of them, your chances of an upset go significantly up. Whereas if you're playing from behind and their ability to run the football, good luck going into Georgia Tech and winning that game. But I do think that Syracuse could potentially slow down their run game enough to be able to win at Georgia Tech. Won't be easy, but it's possible. That's why I'm listing them as the most likely upset candidate for Syracuse football. Number 2. I can't wait for this fan base to find this podcast. Miami. And I think this kind of speaks to how tough Syracuse's schedule is, particularly on the road, that I think that Miami is one of their 2 best chances at an upset this season, because I do think that Miami is going to be a good team. Syracuse plays at Miami on November 8th. Hopefully by early November, it's not stupid hot down in South Florida. I grew up in South Florida, so I am aware that it can get pretty hot down there, even in early to mid-November. And for those that don't know, there's a reason why I'm mentioning the heat. Because Miami, now I'm not saying the University of Miami, but the people who designed the stadium, Hard Rock Stadium down in South Florida, they designed it so that the sun is facing the visitor sideline during afternoon games, making it much hotter to be on the visitor sideline versus the home sideline. It could be by about 20 to 30 degrees. It's a stark difference between being in the shade and being in the sun for the entirety of the game. That's why it's very difficult, particularly very early in the season, to go into Miami and win, because it's freaking hot down there. It is brutal. And meanwhile, in Miami, the whole game is sitting in the shade. So shout out to the people who designed Miami Hard Rock Stadium down there, because it's not fun being the road team in an afternoon game. But we don't know when the game is going to be played anyway. It's in November. They haven't scheduled the time yet. That's not going to happen for a little bit. But another reason, or aside from that, why Miami is one of the 2 likely chances for Syracuse to pull off a road upset, By the point of the year where Syracuse is going to play them in November, we'll know whether or not Carson Beck is Carson Beck. And by that, I mean, is he healthy? He is coming off elbow surgery to his throwing elbow. That is nothing to sneeze at, which is why on ACC Squad and why constantly on this channel I bring it up, because I want to see how Carson Beck is going to be throwing the football. How is he going to come back from elbow surgery? Maybe he's going to be really good. And I do think Carson Beck, when healthy, is the second best quarterback in the ACC. I'm just not sure health-wise how he's going to be. By November, we will certainly know how Carson Beck's elbow is holding up. But having said that, even Carson Beck at his best is not better than what Miami had a year ago, which is Cam Ward. Cam Ward was the number one pick in the NFL draft to Tennessee Titans, I should say, right? He was the ACC Player of the Year, 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But so they don't have Cam Ward. Okay, fine. Carson Beck's still good, not Cam Ward. They should be better defensively. They have a new defensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman from Minnesota. And Minnesota last year was top 10 nationally in points allowed per game. But Minnesota didn't win a lot of games a year ago necessarily because, well, they weren't very good offensively. It had nothing to do with their defense. Their defense was definitely fine. I don't envision that Syracuse will be able to put up 42 against Miami like they did last season. And I don't think that Miami, not that they overlooked Syracuse a year ago, but certainly after last season, Miami is not going to overlook Syracuse this time around because they know that Syracuse can beat Miami, albeit that was a completely different Syracuse team as well. The bottom line is this. This is no disrespect to Georgia Tech. This is no disrespect to Miami. Two teams that I could see, if you eliminate Clemson from the picture, as the second and third best team in the ACC this upcoming season. I do think that these are two very, very good teams. But if you're asking me, hey, Jackson, Syracuse, can they pull off some upsets? Yeah, they can pull off some upsets. Where's the best chance of pulling off an upset? My answer is either at Georgia Tech or at Miami. I'd love your comments in the comments section below. And hey, if you're a Georgia Tech and Miami fan, hey, tell me why I am wrong. Tell me why that your teams are going to spank Syracuse in a couple months from now. Comment in the comment section below. Now, coming up, we're going to discuss a couple opponents where I give Syracuse a puncher's chance at winning. There's a possibility that Syracuse can pull off an upset, but it's not going to be easy. Stick with me on Locked On Syracuse. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings on planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. So you may have a checking account, a savings account, a retirement account. You can combine all in one using Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we are going over the upset likelihood for each of Syracuse's road matchups this upcoming season. Now, earlier on in the show, we talked about why Georgia Tech and Miami are the two opponents that Syracuse has the best chance at pulling out a road upset. And later on in the show, we're going to discuss how Syracuse, could they potentially go on the road and beat Clemson or possibly Notre Dame? Well, you're going to want to keep it right here with Locked On Syracuse to find out. But first, let's go over the games where Syracuse, I would say, has a puncher's chance at winning. Puncher's chance. It's possible. However, it's a kind of a small possibility, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it can't happen. It won't be easy. That's for sure. Number one, Tennessee. Now, I am counting Tennessee again as a road game for Syracuse because it's a neutral site game in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the opening game for Syracuse in Tennessee on Saturday, August 30th. And per FanDuel, Tennessee is a 12.5-point favorite to beat Syracuse, okay? Tennessee in the SEC media poll was picked to finish 9th in the conference, and they have 3 players that made one of the SEC preseason teams for next year, all right? They got defensive back Jermod McCoy, who was first team, a linebacker and Arian Carter, third team, and another defensive back and Boo Carter, third team, all SEC. My initial gut feeling was to put Tennessee as one of the first 2 most likely upset candidates for Syracuse football. And there are a few reasons for it. Number one, it's not a true road game. I think there will probably be more Tennessee representation down in Atlanta, Georgia, but it's not a true road game. Whereas if you were going to Tennessee, that's going to be 95% Tennessee fans. So it makes it a little bit easier that instead of playing in Tennessee, you're playing in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, so it's a neutral site game. That's number one. Number two, it's week 1, and weird stuff can happen in week 1. It just can. I mean, weird stuff can happen any week as far as upsets, things that we don't expect to happen, but more so in week 1 because it's the most unpredictable game, really. It's all about the preseason expectations, and everyone, for the most part, is kind of healthy. But even then, it's tough to predict in week 1. And number 3, kind of like Syracuse, there is a little bit of quarterback uncertainty. It's probably going to be Joey Aguilar starting for Tennessee, but still, he's coming over from Appalachian State. I'm not the most impressed with him from what I saw from him at Appalachian State. So it's a little bit of uncertainty there with Tennessee. But having said that, we know that Syracuse likes to throw the football with offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon. They had the number 1 passing offense in the country last year. Aside from the fact that Syracuse's personnel is vastly different than it was last season, Tennessee has multiple defensive backs that were in the preseason all SEC teams, Jermod McCoy and Boo Carter. And McCoy in particular is special. This is someone in 2024 who was a Jim Thorpe semifinalist. It is given to the nation's top defensive back on an annual basis. This is someone who is projected to be a first-round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. He is going to be playing on Sundays. So could Syracuse go to Atlanta, Georgia, a neutral site game, and shock the Tennessee Volunteers? As I stated earlier, I'm giving them a puncher's chance to do it. And that's what FanDuel is saying too. 12.5 points, not impossible, but it's going to be tough for Syracuse to win in week 1. But hey, I'd be very happy as a Syracuse fan and a Syracuse alum. And hey, if you're a Syracuse fan, comment in the comment section below right now why Syracuse is going to beat Tennessee in week 1. Shock the college football world. I'd love your responses in the comments section below. Next up, SMU. Syracuse travels to SMU on October 4th. And last season, SMU was in the ACC title game, and they were in the college football playoff. They did lose in the first round to Penn State on the road, but you know what? They were good enough to get there. They were one of the best teams in the country last season. But here's my question with SMU and why I'm giving Syracuse a puncher's chance at beating them on the road. Can they recapture the magic that they had last year? Not saying they got lucky or that their run was fluky or anything like that. SMU fans, don't attack me. But let's be honest. What is the likelihood that SMU is going to roll through the ACC in the regular season again? Because last year, they were undefeated in the regular season in conference play. 8-0. Do you think that SMU is going to be 8-0 in the ACC again? Probably not. In fact, I don't think that SMU is going to make the college football playoff. I do think SMU will be a good team. I think they will be probably 8-9 wins. They're going to be a good team. It's not going to be easy to go into SMU on the road, true road game, and win. But are they going to be as good as last year? Probably not. On offense, they did return their starting quarterback from a year ago in Kevin Jennings, so that's a big plus in their favor. They got the same 2 top tight ends from last year. They do like to utilize multiple tight ends in that offense, and they're both back for SMU. They got a wide receiver that they are hoping has a big year in Jordan Hudson coming back, and they got 3 offensive line starters that are coming back from last season. So the offense, for the most part, looks kind of similar. They do have to replace their running back they had in Brashard Smith a year ago. That won't be easy, but offense should be pretty good. On defense, they did return a couple of key starters in their secondary, but for the most part, when you look at their outlook for this upcoming year, their defense is a lot of incoming transfers, but also a lot of players who are getting promoted from within. And you never necessarily know how someone is going to do when you get a promotion from within. Hey, you're a backup last year. How are you going to be as a starter? My rule of thumb, really with any team, doesn't matter, high school, college, pro, even as low as Pop Warner, you can go flag football for all I care. But the rule of thumb for me in football is this. If you have a good head coach and you have a good quarterback, you're going to be fine. And as far as SMU is concerned, they have one of the better head coaches in the ACC in Rhett Lashley. They have one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC in Kevin Jennings. So they're going to be a good team. But are they going to be as good as last season? I don't think so. And with that being said, I do think it's possible that Syracuse can go to SMU and pull off an upset. So to recap the first 2 segments of this show, I think the most likely upset opportunities for Syracuse are at Georgia Tech and at Miami. And a step below those 2 teams, I would say Tennessee neutral site to kick off the season in week 1, followed by SMU on the road. I am hoping, as a Syracuse fan that wants to see Syracuse win every game, and as a Syracuse alum, that the Orange at least go 2-2. Worst case 1-3. But as we're about to talk about, if Syracuse goes 0-4 against these 4 matchups that I've presented to you all, they are in deep trouble of not winning a single road game in 2025. So with that being said, never say never. Can Syracuse go on the road and beat Clemson and beat Notre Dame? Let's talk about it. Any given Saturday, can Syracuse go on the road, beat Clemson, beat Notre Dame? Let's discuss. I think undoubtedly, when you look at the preseason, and who knows how the season will actually unfold, but at least on paper, when you look at the schedule for Syracuse, the 2 toughest games, and I don't think it's particularly close, at Clemson and at Notre Dame. That is the order in which they will play those teams. In order for Syracuse to beat one of these teams, they're going to have to catch them on off days. Because if either Clemson or Notre Dame, if they are clicking, there is no chance that Syracuse can win. Literally 0. These are teams that have much more talent than Syracuse. They have elite head coaches, just like Fran Brown, in my opinion, is one of the best head coaches in the ACC, if not of all college football. Those teams have that too. These are teams where if they're clicking, Syracuse has absolutely no chance at pulling off an upset. It just is what it is. And to be honest with you all, if those teams are clicking, just to make you feel better maybe as a Syracuse fan, to not sound too negative, there's maybe only a handful of teams in the country that can beat a Clemson or can beat a Notre Dame when those teams are playing really well. There's maybe only a handful. Ohio State, maybe some teams in the SEC like a Georgia or a Bama, those teams like a year in and year out basis that are always good. Yeah, maybe those teams could beat them, but there's not many. These are teams that could be in the college football semifinals this upcoming year. Top 4. These are teams that can realistically win the national title in 2025. So if they're on, they're on. There's no chance. Now, if they're off, if you catch them on an off day, but Syracuse is off as well, so they're both not playing well, again, Syracuse is not going to beat them. So the only way that Syracuse could beat a team like Clemson or could beat a team like Notre Dame on the road is to A, catch them in an off game, Or B, and B, Syracuse plays extremely well. Almost mistake-free football in those games. Let's start off talking about Clemson. We've gone over in recent times how Syracuse, actually with not a lot of talent and not as good of a coaching staff, has gone into Clemson and given them a scare. They've done that before. They pulled off the upset years ago at home, but they've gone into Death Valley and have given Clemson a run for its money. They have. They've had double-digit leads in the third, fourth quarter. They haven't been able to get it done. The one-win team in 2020 was within a touchdown in the third quarter of that game. For whatever reason, albeit different regime, Syracuse going to Clemson, they managed to keep it close. So can they finally get over the hump? Well, here's the deal with Clemson this season. They have the best coach in the ACC in Dabo Swinney. They have the best quarterback in the ACC, in my opinion, in Cade Klubnik. They got 2 defensive linemen on Pro Football Focus where they rank inside the top 10 overall players in the nation. Not defensive linemen in the nation, overall players in the nation on their defensive line, Peter Woods and TJ Parker. They are loaded with 4- and 5-star talent at basically every single position group. It's all there. So again, if Clemson's on its A game, Syracuse does not have much of a chance to win. Now, with Notre Dame, they're a little bit different than Clemson. Because Notre Dame is almost like Georgia Tech, but they are the boss version of Georgia Tech. It's not complicated to figure out what Notre Dame is going to want to do to Syracuse and any team in the country. They got one of the top running backs in the nation in Jeremiah Love. You can easily make the argument he's the best running back in the nation. They got an elite offensive line. They're elite on defense. What do they want to do? Run the damn ball. And Syracuse is going to Notre Dame in late November, the Saturday before Thanksgiving. It's going to be cold in Notre Dame, maybe bitterly cold. Syracuse is a team, like we mentioned, likes to throw the football. Those conditions are not necessarily suitable to throw the ball. Now, the difference with Notre Dame, I think, in Clemson is that with Notre Dame, if you can manage to stop them on the ground or slow them down, you give yourself a chance at winning. I feel like with Clemson, they might be a little bit more on offense, more well-rounded than Notre Dame. And we saw with Notre Dame last year, they lost a home game to Northern Illinois early in the season, in large part because Northern Illinois did a very solid job of A, controlling the clock. They had the ball for most of the game, and B, stopping Notre Dame on the ground. Jeremiah Love did not go crazy in that game. He had less than 80 yards. I think he averaged over 4 yards per carry, but that was aided by the fact that he had a run of about 30 yards, and that was it. He really did not make much of an impact in that game. For whatever reason, Northern Illinois went into Notre Dame and beat them. So that's why you say never. But having said that, after Notre Dame lost, I believe, the second game of the season to Northern Illinois last year, they did not lose again until Ohio State in the national championship. That's what it took to eventually beat them. With Notre Dame, stopping the run is easier said than done. And I think we'll know more about how Syracuse can maybe handle a team like Notre Dame when they play Georgia Tech. If Syracuse plays Georgia Tech and they let up 200 yards on the ground to them, they have no chance. They have no chance of beating Notre Dame. Now, if they do well against Georgia Tech and they kind of stop them on the ground, okay, maybe Syracuse has an outside shot at upsetting a team like Notre Dame. It's not going to be easy to win either of these games, which is why what I talked about earlier, Syracuse is going to have to manage to go 2-2 against Georgia Tech, Miami, Tennessee, and SMU this upcoming season in order to get 2 road wins. But comment in the comment section below. Do you give Syracuse a shot to win at Clemson or at Notre Dame? Comment in the comment section below. As far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the future, We got more football content coming this week. I don't necessarily have anything concrete planned. We could do Syracuse position previews coming up, but just know that over the course of this week and really over the course of the next month or so, this is going to be a football mostly podcast here on Locked On Syracuse, okay? So that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future. We will be back tomorrow with another full episode. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show with football recruiting expert Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors and signings each and every day. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse and let me know, where do you think Syracuse has the best chance at pulling off a road upset? Comment in the comment section below. I will see you all again soon.